But I think it's really positive to see quite a strong demand despite a negative market momentum. With as you mentioned, this was the worst quarter in the past 3 years. So I think to notice that altcoins that are normally really risky assets to perform that well on the institutional side of things, it's a pretty positive signal.
Hello, you're watching Proactive. I'm joined by Finecchia International Senior Associate Matteo Greco. Matteo, Happy New Year. Very good to speak with you. Looking at crypto prices, they fell in 2025, yet ETP assets grew. What does that tell us about how investors now want exposure to digital assets?
Hi, Stephen. Happy New Year to you, and thanks for having me as always. 2025 was, I would say, pretty important year for crypto ETP because it reinforced the trend we observed in 2024, confirming that ETP are an effective vehicle for traditional investors, especially that are seeking exposure to the digital asset class. I would say what's really notable is that obviously 2024 was a pretty positive year in terms of price action as well, and it was also the first year with Bitcoin and Ethereum spot ETFs in the US. So I would say the high demand was sort of expected, but seeing that 2025 showed such a strong demand with total inflow really close to what we observed in 2024, despite the overall market trend was negative, especially in the second half of the year, I would say shows pretty positive signals in terms of crypto ETPs worldwide.
Ethereum ETPs saw far stronger inflows than price action would suggest, Matteo. Why is institutional money gravitating so strongly towards Ethereum?
I would say we noticed in the ETP space what happened natively in the crypto space with Bitcoin was obviously the first asset to let's say come alive, and then a few years after Ethereum followed, and since then it's basically been the second most capitalized assets in for about 10 years at this point almost. And what we noticed is in the ETP space, it's that sort of similarly, Bitcoin spot ETFs got approved January 2024, and obviously, despite Ethereum as well being approved in summer the same year, the focus was mainly on BTC for investors because that's the asset you go for when you start to get exposure to the crypto asset class, and then considering the success that Bitcoin ETFs and ETPs last year generated, this year was a year of broadening the exposure, and so Ethereum sort of dominated proportionally speaking because the net inflows on Ethereum were about 45% of the net inflows of Bitcoin, but the market cap ratio is basically 1 to 5. Ethereum is about 20% of the BTC market cap. So there's a definitely in proportion a much stronger demand for Ethereum this year. And it's definitely positive because it shows that demand is not limited to Bitcoin, but it's growing in for the asset class in general on an institutional point of view.
Looking at the fourth quarter, it was the weakest quarter in 3 years. Did December's outflows feel technical and seasonal, or did sentiment genuinely shift?
I think it's a combination of factors. Naturally, year end, especially on the traditional finance side of things, it's a period of portfolio adjustment, tax optimization, profit taking, and obviously, as mentioned before, the crypto ETPs both for Bitcoin and Ethereum performed really well in the past couple of years. So I think on one end it's quite natural. Obviously, on the other side, the general sentiment for crypto market, but overall in terms of geopolitical and macroeconomic situation, has shifted a bit towards at least a bit more cautious approach. We noticed just a couple of days ago what happened between US and Venezuela. So obviously there's a lot of attention to all the tension worldwide in terms of the various relationships on a geopolitical and macroeconomical point of view. So I would say all in all, it's probably a little bit of a hand-in-hand thing where they probably both are true at this stage, and let's see what happens in 2026, and which, if basically we go towards a more bearish or bullish trend.
Altcoin ETPs were the most resilient segment later in the year. Is that a sign investors are getting more comfortable moving beyond Bitcoin?
Yeah, I would definitely say that. As I mentioned, we noticed that with Ethereum first, and then here as well, we are noticing a similar pattern to what happens and what happened in the past on the native market, with the interest and investment that's spreading towards altcoin in general. Obviously, there's been a big impact as well in Q4 because of several altcoins being approved and launched as ETFs in the US, which obviously created organic demand and helped the general AUM for that subsector, because obviously those products were not live yet, so there couldn't be any outflows, and what we witnessed in Q4 could be only inflows. But I think it's really positive to see quite a strong demand despite a negative market momentum. With as you mentioned, this was the worst quarter in the past 3 years. So I think to notice that altcoins that are normally really risky assets to perform that well on the institutional side of things, it's a pretty positive signal.
Looking ahead, Matteo, do you expect crypto ETPs to keep growing even if prices remain volatile?
I think in the short term, price will be quite a key, because 2025 already absorbed a lot of demand despite a negative price action. So I think it might be difficult to keep the demand that high and the interest so strong if we had a negative year after Q3 and Q4 in 2025, where, let's say, not great in terms of price action. So I think in the short term, there's probably need for a bit of a better market sentiment and market price action. But in the long term, definitely we're noticing a lot of interest both on the offering side with issuers offering more products, and a lot of issuers starting to launch both in US and Europe. And so I would say long term, there's definitely a bullish sentiment around it. In the short term, I think the price action might have an important role.
So thanks as always for your insights. We look forward to speaking to you again next month.
Thank you, Stephen. Always a pleasure.
Matteo Greco is Senior Associate at Finekia International.